I'm on a mission to get every human being in the world to add one simple thing to their morning routine. And it is called the high five habit. And here's what it is. Every morning after you brush your teeth and you get that gunk out of your mouth so you're not spreading that nasty breath everywhere, okay? I want you to take a moment, put your toothbrush down, and look at the human being in the mirror. That's not your reflection. That is a human being who needs you. A human being who's beaten down, who feels forgotten, who is so sick and tired of your criticism. And I want you to just stand there and look at them and take a moment, because the rest of your day is going to be about everybody else. And then I don't want you to say a thing. This is the genius of this habit. You can be on your lowest morning, which I was when I, again, divine intervention or stupidity. You can be the judge, right? It was April 2020, and I was having a moment in my life where I just felt overwhelmed by life. I was waking up, the anxiety had come back. I felt like life was unfair. I had lost my dream job. We were in the middle of the pandemic. My kids were in a state of huge grief and anger and frustration because university, had closed, and, now they're dealing with it. I had a bunch of like all of a sudden my business is imploding. And, don't forget, just over 10 years ago, I was in a crisis financially where my husband and I were about to lose we couldn't even pay for groceries. My dad was lending us money.
Yeah.
And so it was triggering all of that. And I was thinking this, like, I've worked so hard. I'm a good person. Like, how could you be doing this to me? Like, I don't deserve, like, just.
And you were pretty successful at that point already, right?
God, successful. I was the number one female motivational speaker in the world. I had a daytime syndicated talk show in the United States. So 175 shows a year, giving advice. I, had the 5-second rule book, which was self-published and a huge millions of copies sold.
But I think that's the powerful thing about this story. Even with all that success, you were still racked with self-doubt and anxiety and negative thoughts.
Because I hadn't had the biggest breakthrough of my entire life yet. And I had it one morning in April of 2020. You see, the 5-second rule is extraordinary, but it doesn't address what I believe is everybody's fundamental issue. And everybody's fundamental issue is that you either hate yourself or you do nothing but judge yourself. And this habit of relentless self-criticism and relentless self-rejection is the reason why you're unhappy. It's the reason why you're never satisfied. It's the reason why you can't take a compliment and why you're uncomfortable feeling celebrated. And it all comes down to the fact that when you stand in front of the mirror every single morning, you have this really subtle way that's not so subtle of starting your day by rejecting yourself. And I'm going to unpack this because it's unbelievably powerful when you start to truly understand this. Because if you can't look in the mirror and authentically see a human being that you respect, that you encourage, that you like, that you're cheering for, I'm going to even leave love off the table because I think that is so unattainable for where people are right now. Let's just go with, can you accept yourself? Can you like yourself? Can you see a person that's worthy of support, worthy of your encouragement? Can we just start with that baseline? Because for my research, the average person cannot. From my research, 50% of men and women do not or cannot look at themselves in the mirror because they are either disgusted by the person they see or they are disappointed by them. And for those of us that can look in the mirror, we're still rejecting ourselves because we focus on what we don't like. or we start to mindlessly think about all the things that we haven't done right or that we didn't do yet. On this particular morning, April 2020, I'm overwhelmed by my life. I drag myself into the bathroom. I immediately see my reflection and I'm like, oh, God, you look like hell.
Yeah.
I start ticking off all the things, the saggy neck, one boob lower than the other, how exhausted I look, the gray hair coming in, how old I'm starting to seem.
Yeah.
And then the mind, once it goes negative, keeps going in that direction unless you're 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, not thinking about that. But so my mind's going down the drain. I'm like, why'd I get up so late? I got a Zoom call in 8 minutes. God, you didn't even, text him back yet. And the dog still needs to be. And I'm like, the beat down, the boom, boom, boom starts. And, I don't know what came over me. But that morning standing there, could not think of a thing to say. And here's the important part. When you feel like shit, when you're overwhelmed by your life, you're not going to believe a pep talk anyway. Because it doesn't match how you feel. And so for whatever reason, I literally just raised my hand and I high-fived the woman that I saw in the mirror because she looked like she needed a high five. She looked like she needed somebody to say, it's going to be okay. You can do this. Get out there. And, from that very first one, it wasn't like lightning came crashing through the ceiling and, stuck me in the head. That's not what happened. But there's definitely a switch inside each and every one of us.
Yeah.
So think about the walls here.
Yeah.
Even when the lights are off, there's electricity in these walls. Even during your worst moments, there is vitality ripping through your veins. There is an electrical life force within you. And life can turn that switch off, but it's still there. There was something about this high five action that felt like a flip, like the switch flipped on, and all of a sudden the energy could connect back and something inside me turned on. Now, that first morning, I didn't go, yeah, that's not what happened. I just felt this sort of shift to, all right, you got a roof over your head, your family's healthy, you've saved money. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
Get out there. I didn't even think those things. It was more like the electricity, the energy in me, this vitality kind of kicked in. But it was the second morning where the profound nature of what I was stepping into really kicked in. So I wake up, anxiety, ankles right up the legs, feel like the rush of, oh God, something's wrong. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I get out of bed. I start walking to the bathroom, and it's as I'm walking to the bathroom, I'm not even in there yet, that I feel something I have never felt in my entire adult life. And it's this. When you're about to go to a cafe and you're going to meet somebody you're really excited to meet, right?
Yeah.
Or somebody you really love, you're going to see them.
Yeah.
What do you feel right as you're about to walk in the cafe?
You're excited. You're upbeat. You're anticipating something good happening.
Yeah. I actually realized I was feeling that way about seeing myself.
Yeah.
Now, I'm 53 this year. I don't think until that morning in April 2020, I had ever had an experience as an adult of being excited to see the human being Mel Robbins. I've been excited to see an outfit or a haircut or the way new eyeshadow might look. But the human being? The way our kids, when they're really, really little, just love the sight of themselves? This unconditional support and celebration that's hardwired in your DNA when you're born?
Yeah.
And so as I rounded the corner that second morning, that's when the profound nature of this started to really hit me. And I stood there and I stared at the woman in the mirror. And I realized I don't think I've ever asked myself the question, what does she need from me today? I've never joined in partnership with myself. I have been so busy trying to get shit done, trying to make sure people like me, trying to make sure the bills are paid, trying to make sure everybody else is okay, trying to do all this stuff that is the stuff of our lives, that I have forgotten about the most important person, and that is myself. And again, I'm going to go back to a point that we have been talking about kind of in various ways, which is we all know that we're supposed to love ourselves. We all know that we're supposed to be kind to ourselves. You can read a quote on Instagram. You should talk to yourself like your best friend. The problem is how. You read a quote like that, you're like, no shit, Sherlock. How do I do it? I mean, like, what? Seriously? Right? How do you do that? I don't know. I've been beating the shit out of myself for years. How do I stop doing it? I don't know. And, here's the thing. Like, logically, we know it's stupid. Because if beating yourself up, being hard on yourself, rejecting yourself, trashing yourself, if it actually worked, we'd all be millionaires. We'd have rock star bodies. We'd have the best marriages on the planet. We'd never have to work a day in our life. We'd be on a beach somewhere. Like, it would work.
Yeah.
But instead, we have these patterns of thinking and small patterns of behavior, like not looking in the mirror at yourself is a form of rejecting yourself. Picking yourself apart is a habit of rejecting yourself. And so when you start your day like that, which you do, and then you go out into the world having rejected your very being, this is the reason why you are so thirsty for everybody else's validation. This is the reason why you are seeking your worth in the money that you make, in the car that you drive, in the downloads that you get, in the likes that you have, in the neighborhood that you live in. You think your worth is outside of you. And I'm here to tell you the secret to your fucking life is grab that worth and bring it back home. Start practicing a physical habit, an action that demonstrates to your brain that you respect yourself, that you believe that you're worthy, that you deserve forgiveness, that you deserve encouragement, that you believe in you. And as you start to practice the physical action, the universal symbol for I got you, I love you, I celebrate you, I see you, I believe in you. When you practice this physical action, the neuroassociation that is already in your brain with the high five to yourself in the mirror takes over. It's insane how this works. The science is mind-blowing. I think this is 1,000 times more powerful than the high five habit because it cuts down to the core of who you are.
You think it's more powerful than the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 habit?
Hell yes, I do. Hell yes, because the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a tool that will push you to take action. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a tool you use to cut off the worries that trigger anxiety. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a tool that you use to create a moment of objectivity and control when you're normally triggered so you can consciously choose a different response.
Yeah.
The high five habit goes all the way down to the core of who you are and how you treat yourself. And when you become a human being who has compassion for yourself, who likes you, it won't matter what happens out there.
Yeah.
Because everything in here is healed and taken care of. And so, somebody can say to me, I don't love you anymore. I don't like you. It'll sting, but it doesn't change the fact that I still like myself. Because I practice and demonstrate it. That's the difference.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the hidden magic in the high five habits is, because I've been trying it the last few days, right?
And what did you experience?
It is powerful because...
Well, walk us through. Like you're standing at your bathroom sink. Yeah, and walk us through your experience.
Well, first of all, you have to take a pause from your life. Whatever you were going to do, it requires an intentional pause to go, no, I'm going to now do this action for myself. And I've got to say, before I tell you how it went, I think it would have been very different for me a few years ago because I feel self-compassion, not seeking your worth from outside, from other people, from download numbers, likes, what people say about you, which was a huge part of my life. Mm-hmm. I feel that having put a lot of that to bed now and really feeling that I actually like the person I see in the mirror these days. So I kind of feel 5 years ago, I would have had a different experience with it, but it was still powerful because you are just looking at yourself and you're putting your hand on the mirror And I think what it is, it's just that pause, that moment of seeing me. Like you are seeing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know, obviously as a guy, what do? We're often looking in the mirror. We might be looking at our beard as we're shaving, right?
Yeah.
But you're not looking at your eyes,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're just looking at, I need to shave. I missed a bit here. Let me get rid of that. And then you crack on, right? Or you look at your face and your hair, but you're not really looking at yourself.
Right.
You're seeing your silhouette. You are seeing yourself, but you're not seeing yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's what I think was really powerful, was that it's just another, like, I feel it's just another tool now, which is going to take me all of 2 seconds, if that's 5 seconds tops. It's not as if I don't have time to add that in. There's no harm in adding it in. And frankly, I like adding it in. It makes me feel good. It's like, and I think it's what you say, it's the action.
Yeah.
You don't have to say anything if you're not in the mood to say
anything. I don't
anything.
want you to say anything, actually. And the reason why is the neuroassociation. So,
what do you mean by that?
Well, here's what I mean by that. So, when you high five someone else, what does the action of a high five communicate?
It's just a universal symbol of, you got this, I see you, you're great, we can do this. It depends on the situation, but it's a good feeling. It's a mutual sort of validation type experience.
Tell me about the London Marathon and getting high fives.
Oh, I mean,
what did a stranger's high five mean to you?
It just gave you, like, and that's the key, it's strangers, right? You don't know them and they're looking at you and you're looking at them, or maybe you're not even looking at them. You just went through, you give a high five. It's like you've taken a shot of feel goods. It's validation. It's like, hey, you know what? We're in this together. You're standing at the side cheering, I'm running. But at that moment, it was like common humanity. It was like, there was no animosity. And actually, it's kind of one of my big learnings from the London Marathon actually was, and it relates to this, I think, is that that's kind of who we are. Like in what is considered a very divided world at the moment, I went and did the London Marathon and all I saw was love, strangers giving love to other people that they didn't know, right? And how did they give that love? Through cheering, but more often than not, with a high five.
Correct. It is a universal symbol of encouragement, of love, of celebration. And the neuroassociation, whether you live in a culture where you've been high-fived or not, the neuroassociation is still there because you have seen them in sport.
Yeah.
You've seen them in marathons. You've seen teachers give them to kids. So your brain has a lifetime of programming in your subconscious that is triggered by this action. It is neurologically impossible to high five yourself and think you're a loser, you failed, I don't like your face. Your brain will not allow you to do it because the neuroassociation is so entrenched. It has only ever meant, I celebrate you, I see you, I got you, keep going, you got this, I'm behind you.
As you say that, Mel, it makes me think of gratitude, because when we are feeling grateful, we can't feel down, we can't feel anxious, we can't feel annoyed with ourselves. And in some ways, this is kind of gratitude for ourselves.
Correct. Because the thing about gratitude, which obviously has tremendous, demonstrated, proven benefits in your life, most of us are grateful for things outside of us.
Yeah.
What I'm teaching the world to do is to unlock neuroassociation in your mind and in your nervous system and aim it back at yourself. And use this simple habit to interrupt the critic, to break the default loops in your mind associated with judgment, shame, criticism, hatred for self, and to replace it with a new default setting of seeing yourself the way you see your child, which is love. Yeah. Like my kids do stuff that piss me off all the time. And I can be upset with them or disappointed with them, but I never stop loving them.
Yeah.
And there is something that has happened to each and every one of us that as life's pains and heartaches and disappointments and setbacks sort of stack up, we stop loving ourselves. We start judging ourselves more. We start condemning ourselves more. We start rejecting ourselves more. We start trying to seek somebody else's love and approval in order to fill up this well inside of us that we've been digging because we've been rejecting ourselves. And so, it's so powerful because the action alone is what communicates it. If you're looking at yourself and you raise your hand on your hardest days, what the high five says is not, yeah, I'm amazing. Like, this is not going to turn you into a narcissist. This is grounded in compassion.
Yeah.
This is basically saying, I see you. You're right. This is hard. And you know what? You can do this. And I'm going to be here. And I've got your back. And when you send yourself into your day with that physical action, it leaves an imprint in your mind and spirit. Now, there's a couple reasons why. I don't even write about this part in the book because I didn't know this until I started doing podcasts for the book.
Yeah.
So Dr. Amen told me, who's, one of the leading experts in the brain, that one of the reasons why you feel better when you do it, no matter how terrible of a morning it is because your brain has always given you dopamine when somebody else high fives you.
Yeah.
So these sorts of gestures are rewarded in the brain. So when you simply high five yourself, your brain doesn't distinguish between me high-fiving me and me high-fiving you. It just sees, oh, I know what that is. Drip, dopamine. Oh, I believe in that person. The second thing that happens is that your body is hardwired for celebratory energy. This is that electricity that's in the walls that has a switch that you can turn on and off. And so, for example, when you cross the finish line of the London Marathon, what do you instinctively do?
High five someone.
Yeah, and raise your hands, right? When your favorite team scores, raise your hands. When you yell surprise at a birthday party, you raise your hands. When you say hello, you raise your arm. When you go to high five somebody, you raise your arms. When you hug somebody, you raise your arms. This is wired through your entire body. And normally we give that celebratory energy to other people or things.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you, when you high five yourself, you flip the switch. You flip the switch and give yourself a little bit of that vitality that's coursing through you to help you move into your day.
Yeah, I see it as almost like it is about the high five, but it's not in many ways as well, because it's like if you're going down a road and the high five to yourself sets you off on a different path for the rest of that day compared to had you not done it, right?
1,000% right. So let's just use a great example that everybody can latch onto. Sport.
Yeah.
So if a team is about to play the championship in the league, right?
Yeah.
And they're the underdogs. What is the best way to send the team into that game? Is it to beat them down? Oh, you did a terrible job on the London Marathon. You're going to face plant in New York. Oh my God. And I saw your split times. We're fucked. No, that's not the best way to do it.
But that's what we do to ourselves.
Correct. Correct. And so I'm here to say, you don't have to say anything because you're not going to believe it. So we're going to cheat this. We're going to circuit your feelings.
You're bypassing
Correct.
words. It's like when you take like this ridiculous example, but it's like when you take a B12 supplement, but you take it sublingually, so it dissolves. So you bypass having to go into the gut, through the liver, and then you get it straight in.
Correct.
And it's got that feel to me.
1,000%. And so you send yourself into the game of life with that sort of optimism, with that resilience, with that compassion. And, look, some days you're going to laugh. Some days you might cry. People report some days you're going to just feel a little bit better. And some days you're going to high five yourself and laugh out loud from the dopamine and walk into your boss's office and ask for that raise or quit. Because you're going to remember that no matter what, you're going to be okay. You're going to remember that no matter what, you got your own back. You're going to remember that it doesn't matter if nobody says great job at that presentation that you worked on, because you can walk into the bathroom, as people have written to us, having practiced this. Hey, I did a presentation at work. Nobody said a damn word. The old me would have walked into my cube and cried and thought I was getting fired. I knew I did a good job. I walked into the bathroom and high-fived myself. Your kids can stick this in their back pocket. And it's a way to reset yourself when you start going down that negative road. And why is this important? It's important because the high five is not going to remove poverty. It's not going to remove discrimination. It's not going to remove diabetes. It's not going to remove the fact that somebody just said they want to divorce you. It's not going to remove all of the trauma. It doesn't change those things. It changes you.
Yeah.
And it changes your relationship with yourself and your ability to believe that through your actions and your attitude, you can move the needle on those things.
Yeah, I love that last point, Mel, because the similarities between the way you talk about this and the way I've been talking about certain behaviors and 5-minute habits for years, they are so connected. And one of the things I often say, and I want to just acknowledge you for what you just said, it's not going to change your life situation. You know, if you're in poverty, you're still going to be in poverty, but you're going to be a different person. You're going to be better able to face the stresses that are in your life.
Yes.
And I think this is such an important point, right? Because I have said this before on the show, but I always think it's worth reiterating that a lot of people feel that self-help or wellness is the preserve of the wealthy and the middle classes. But actually, habits like this, yes, they'll help someone who's got a ton of money in their bank accounts, because a lot of people like that are racked with self-doubt on the inside as well. But it's also going to help someone who is in poverty, or a single mum who's working 2 jobs and has got 3 kids and is really struggling. That little micro moment each morning where she sees herself in the mirror, she signals to her brain that she is worthy, that actually she's a human being with real feelings, and for all her qualities and all her, all the great things that she's doing, that has power, right?
Oh my God,
it is
amazing
free.
Power.
It is free. There's not a single person pretty much who is listening to this or watching this right now who couldn't just either pause or at the end go, all right, I'm convinced, Mel. Like, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to give this a go.
Yeah. Well, first of all, don't rush it. Don't rush it. So don't go into the bathroom and slap the mirror and be like, I didn't feel anything. I want you to, again, as you so rightly put, take a minute and just look at yourself, because for most people, that's the hardest part. I mentioned that, I get smarter and I learn so much from every comment and people that write their stories in. And one person, Allison Bird, a friend of mine, who made my ability to explain the depth of this so much deeper, because she said one thing to me when she tried it before the book came out. She said, I think it's working. I feel energized. I said, but what surprised me, Mel? I said, what? She goes, the resistance. I said, the resistance? What are you talking about? She's like, oh, first couple days I did this, I stood in front of that mirror and there was something in me that's like, I couldn't even raise my hand. There was this resistance. And so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And so I, of course, put something out. Hey, to the 700,000 people on the newsletter list, anybody trying this and feel any resistance? We write to everybody that's in our little test group. Anybody feel, holy cow. It turns out that most people do not have an immediate positive, oh, I'm doing this reaction. Most people have massive resistance to even trying it. And I want to explain why, because this is extraordinarily sad. And it also is an enormous opportunity for growth, because I believe, based on having 136,000 people go through a 5-day challenge online that we're monitoring in an app from 91 countries and seeing what they're reporting, I know that this takes 5 days to work. 5 days before you have an enormous breakthrough in how you see and relate to yourself. 5 days before the chemical, physiological, neurological, physical, and psychological change starts to go holy cow, this is crazy. This works like this. And so the resistance comes from self-judgment and self-condemnation. And I'm going to tell you a story to drive this home. For people who stand in the bathroom mirror when they try the high five habit and they feel this resistance in their body, first of all, let me say, it's really normal to think this is weird because it is, okay? It just sounds so cheesy. For those of us that grew up with Saturday Night Live, you're going to think of Stuart Smiley. You know, I'm nice. People like me. That skit they used to do about the guy who talked to himself in the mirror. You're going to stand there and go, seriously, Dr. Charlie and Mel Robbins, you two have lost your mind. But okay. If it's weird as you do it, that's a sign it's working.
Yeah.
So Dr. Leaf told me, oh, well, that's what it feels like when a new neural pathway is getting plowed. So if it feels weird, good, because we're teaching you to do the opposite of criticizing yourself. Yeah. But the resistance is something else. The resistance is the fact that every morning as you start your day, you drag your entire past into the bathroom with you. And if you're somebody who has experienced trauma or been abused or abandoned or neglected or grew up with chaos and addiction, or you've been the victim of a crime, or you're constantly having to deal with discrimination or violence, all stuff that you're not responsible for. There are a lot of people who take all of that from their past, and when they look at themselves, they see somebody who's damaged. They see somebody who's unworthy. They see somebody who is unlovable because of those things. And what the high five starts to become when you do it is it becomes literally an act of defiance. It becomes an act of strength. It becomes a sign that I'm a survivor. It becomes permission to heal. It becomes this deep sense of feeling and knowing where you are and the fact that you have an extraordinary future despite all of the pain and suffering that you have endured and survived. And then there are people that bring everything they regret, all the shame, all the regret, so the cheating, the lying, the stealing, the hurt you've caused yourself or other people, the missed opportunities. And boy, did I get an unbelievable example of this in my own life. So, I was doing the high five habit myself. And during the early days of the pandemic, my husband had just been diagnosed with depression. And he's a super healthy guy. He is a certified Buddhist meditation instructor. He leads men's retreats called Soul Degree. He's a yoga instructor. He's wildly involved with our community and with our family. He's a super high functioning guy. But he's just felt heavy. There's been like a cloud there, like a heaviness to him, there's no light between his eyes. And so thankfully, his therapist finally got him to go see a psychopharmacologist and somebody to do the advanced testing. They're like, dude, you have dysthymia. You have really long-term depression. You're lucky you've been doing all this stuff because it's kept you alive. And I turned to him at one point. I've been doing this for a couple weeks rather. And I'm like, I know I'm not your doctor, and I know I'm not an expert in your mental health, but I really think you should try this high five thing. I really think it's going to help you with this depression. He's like, I'm not high five. It is the stupidest thing. I don't care what you're doing. No. And I'm like, okay, if you won't do it for yourself, would you just do it for me? Would you do it for 5 days? Because we're in the middle of researching this now. And I haven't even shared it with my audience yet. And I'm kind of writing down in my journal what I'm feeling. And I've got a couple people on the team. Would you just do it for me? He's like, all right. So he kind of did the first one, are you happy? Typical spouse thing. So he did it for 5 days. And then I asked him what he thought. And he said, you're on to something really big. And I said, why do you say that? And I had no idea how dark my husband's thoughts were. I had no idea how much he was condemning himself, how much shame he felt. I knew that he was struggling with depression. I had no idea that for the past 7 years, the man who has stood next to me at the bathroom sink next to me would look up at the mirror and see a person that he hated. He saw a person that had failed. He believed that since the restaurant business didn't work, and since it left us 800 grand in debt, and that his wife had to go out and make the money, that he was the world's worst father, the world's worst husband, and he has been condemning himself every day for 7 years. And the reason he thought the high five was stupid is because you only high five people you care about. You only high five people who are winning. And he, of all people, didn't deserve it. And for me, I knew that he was struggling with shame around the restaurant business. I knew he was struggling with the amount of debt that we had and the fact that, he had, the investors lost money. Like, for me, I had a totally different experience. I'm like, you guys worked at that for 8 years? You made your investors whole? Like, hello, entrepreneurship? Like, we wouldn't have the 5-second rule without it. Are you kidding? Like, woohoo, we're winning. This is amazing. Like, his business partner had the same, like, he was proud of what they built, proud of how hard they worked. Chris, for whatever reason, that was not his story. Yeah. His story was condemnation, regret, shame. He could only see a failure. And, what was wild about that is, I've for years talked Chris up. I've for years have told him how proud I am of him. He was the CFO of the business as the company was taking off. Yeah. Like, he owns half of it. Like, he's an integral part of everything. Yeah. He doesn't see it that way. And that's an important part. Yeah. Nobody can heal you. Nobody can change how you talk to yourself. This is an inside job. And so if you relate to how my husband feels, I want you to understand that what Chris said to me was that this high five and pushing through the resistance is an act of forgiveness. It's an act of healing. It's an act of support and compassion that allows you and shows you that you are giving yourself permission to feel good again, that you deserve to be happy, that you deserve and that you can continue to push on and go do better and be better and feel better. And that of all people, you're going to stop judging you. Oh my God. You look like hell. And the woman I saw standing in the mirror did. She looked exhausted. She looked tired. She looked stressed. I actually felt sad for her. And then out of habit, I started picking her apart. The dark circles under her eyes, the saggy neck, one boob is hanging lower than the other. And then, of course, once you start picking yourself apart, your thoughts only go more negative. So then I start thinking about the day ahead, and it wasn't optimistic. It was like, why did I get up so late? And I got 8 minutes before the Zoom call starts. And shit, there's the dog and I haven't even walked the dog yet. I did not respond to those text messages. So now I'm doing the beat down. Mm. And here's the interesting thing. If either one of you guys had walked into the bathroom that morning, I would have spun on a dime. I would have been like, Damien, Jake, oh, come on, guys. Yes, this sucks. Yeah, this is hard right now. Yeah, you don't deserve this. But you know what? If anybody can figure it out, you can. Come on, you got this. Get your ass back out there. Suck it up. I would have been able to lift you up. But standing there alone in my bathroom in my underwear, I actually couldn't think of anything to say. And honestly, I don't think I would have believed it because it's not how I felt.
Yep.
And I don't know what came over me because I'm kind of a cynical person. I'm not all woo-woo like, a lot of people are. I like science, but this sounds so dumb. I literally don't know what came over me. But standing there in my underwear, I didn't even have a bra on, for God's sakes. I literally raised my hand
And I high-fived the woman in the mirror because she needed it. And look, it's not like lightning struck. The heavens didn't part and there weren't like, oh, angel, like that. That's not what happened. I literally just felt like something small shift inside me. That's it. I just felt like a little, my shoulders dropped, my chin lift. I actually laughed because it's so dumb. I mean, come on. That's pathetic. I'm standing there. I got to high five myself. Jeez Louise, who does that? And I kind of laugh at the absurdity of the whole thing. And then I don't even say it. I kind of feel this sense of suck it up. Come on. It's not that bad. There's people with a lot. Just get out there. And I go on with my day. That is what happened.
Wow.
It was the second morning, you guys, that it really hit me. So let me tell you what happened on the second morning, because this is crazy. So I wake up, same problems, same overwhelm, same anxiety, same beat down. I 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get out of bed. I make the bed. I start walking toward the bathroom. And that's the moment I felt something I have never felt before. When you are about to meet a friend and you're about to walk into a pub or a cafe and you're going to have a beer or you're going to have like a coffee with somebody you really like, what do you feel in that moment when you're about to walk into the pub?
Excitement. Oh, you feel great.
Yeah.
Did you have that feeling?
I did. I actually felt excited to see.
About what?
To see the human being, Mel Robbins.
What were you saying to yourself, Mel, when you put your hand on the glass?
You don't have to say anything. And I felt it before I even got to the bathroom. And this is the part that had me really wake up. I am going to be 53 years old this year. I don't ever remember experiencing the feeling of being excited to see the human being, Mel Robbins, in a mirror. I've been excited to see an outfit. I've been excited to see what a haircut looks like. But the human being, never.
Mel, I've never even looked at the human being in the mirror.
Correct.
I've looked at the haircut and I've looked at the outfit like you, and I've looked at the bags and do I need a shave this morning? I'm 42. I've never looked at the human being in the mirror. Never.
Correct.
When you think about it, who does? It's a means to an end looking in the mirror, right? Brushing your teeth. Are they clean? Great. Move on with the rest of my day.
Correct.
But Mel, will you tell us about this? Because I'm not being cynical, but I want to address the cynic that would still go, yeah, this is great, but it's not for me. You talk really quite powerfully in your book about neurobionics, which to me is the fascinating area that this links to.
Yeah.
Now, the way I understood it was that we learn faster when we do an unusual activity and we link it up with a positive thought. It goes in deeper. But would you explain in a bit more detail why this
of course.
Exercise you're describing can be so profoundly positive?
Yeah. So let me unpack this for you. And I will hit you between the eyes with the research, because at this point in the story, I'm not even in the bathroom yet. I'm realizing as I'm rounding the corner to step in the bathroom that I've spent probably 45 years either criticizing or ignoring myself. You talk a lot about morning routines and everything we need to do to set yourself up for, making sure that you're a high performance person and you're happier. You stepped over the habit that everybody has, which is as you're standing there brushing your teeth, you drift into autopilot and you either beat the shit out of yourself or you ignore yourself. And then you start thinking about your day and everything that you're going to do for everybody else. And I'm here to tell you, there is a habit you need every morning based on crazy science that works for you because your brain and your nervous system is already programmed to have it work. And so I'm going to unpack this because it's important for you to understand where the cynicism comes from, because it's fucking sad. It's really sad. And so standing there that second morning, I'm having this weird ass experience where I'm like, what? Like there's me standing here, and then there's this human being in the mirror that I've never actually paid attention to. Behind the skin, behind the face, there is a soul, there is a person, there are emotions, and I have never actually even considered it. You want to go out in the world and do great things? You want to be a leader? There is something called emotional contagion. How you feel about yourself, the emotions you feel in the morning, they are contagious to the people you're trying to lead and inspire and change. And so it starts with you, especially if you think you're going to be some kind of leader. This is not cheeseball. This is science. And so as I stand there and I realize there is a human being I've ignored, there is a person who needs me that I have neglected. And I put the toothbrush down. And it's important for you, as you said, Jake, you need to do this right after you brush your teeth, because I want you to stack the habit with something you already do. You got to clean the crap out of your mouth. You don't want to go into the day and spread dragon breath all over the place. You got to clean the crap out of your brain so you don't spread that negative bullshit that's in your head that's been building for your entire lifetime on unsuspecting people around you and for yourself. And so I put the toothbrush down, and here's what you're going to notice. First things first, this will feel weird. It will. And the reason is explained by neuroscience. You have the opposite habit of high-fiving yourself. You either ignore or you criticize yourself or you judge yourself. That's what you do in the mirror every day. The high five is the exact opposite. So just like I write with my right hand right now, it's not weird at all because it's already programmed into my subconscious brain through neural pathway connection and through a lifetime of physical and mental activity fused together. If I lost my arm in a car accident today and I had to start writing with my left hand, of course it would feel weird. It's new. It's the opposite of what I've done. That's what it feels like to create new neural pathways. So weirdness is not a rejection of the idea. It's your own brain and how it works. That's number one. Number two, there are only two reactions that people have when they first do it. It's either wildly positive. So you might raise your hand and high five the mirror, and you will either burst into laughter at the absurdity and kind of how good it feels, or you'll start crying in a positive way because there's a deep emotional release for people when they realize I have been waiting for a very long time for you to wake the fuck up and actually see me and start supporting me. And the tears come from a sense of relief that you finally got it. You're finally returning home. You're finally coming back to who you fundamentally are. Because as a kid, you didn't lay in front of a mirror and criticize your face or your chubby thighs. You literally crawled up to it and kissed yourself. You used to spin in front of it. You used to dance when the music came on. Life taught you to criticize and ignore yourself. So this is a coming back to what is innately wired into your DNA, this need for support and celebration of self. And so it feels so good. And I'm going to explain the science behind that because there's so much science here that we've even uncovered since finishing the book. It's bananas. So the second, though, and more likely response is the resistance. You will scoff at it. You will not do it. You'll roll your eyes. You'll tell yourself this is stupid. Let me tell you where the resistance comes from, because this is what's blocking you from being a high performer. It's blocking you from feeling fulfillment. It's blocking you from the happiness and joy you deserve. When you stand in the bathroom every morning, you drag your entire past into the bathroom with you. So if you've ever been abused or experienced trauma or been discriminated against or been abandoned or heartbroken or have had anything done to you that makes you feel like you're unworthy or unlovable or somehow you're damaged, that experience in your past is the evidence that you use to see a human being that is unworthy or unlovable or damaged because of those things. And so you see somebody who doesn't deserve celebration because of those things. Or if you're a human being, you have done shit you regret, whether it's cheating or it's drugs or it's lying or it's not living up to your potential or it's giving up on yourself or it's hurting other people or all the things that, boy, you would forgive Damien or Jake or Mel Robbins for, but you can't forgive yourself for it You wear that shame and that regret like a yoke around your neck, and then you bring it into the bathroom every morning and you see that evidence. Like my husband did this for years. He followed his dream and went into the pizza restaurant, and they worked, he and his best friend, for 7 years at it, and then it shut down. It didn't return the investment that they had hoped and they had worked their tails off for. And when he left that business in 2014, you guys, he could not separate the failure of the business from how he saw himself. My husband, despite having the name Christopher Robbins, Winnie the Pooh, he would walk into that mirror for 6 years and see a failure. Did he feel like he deserved a high five? No, because he had evidence for why. And that's the resistance. There's another reason why, and this is big with high performers. It's because you believe that it's only when you're achieving something that's worthy of celebration that you deserve it. That until you have the money in the bank, until you have the number on the scale, until you're married to the right person or living in the right neighborhood or driving that Range Rover or whatever the fuck it is that you think that you need, or your hair's not kinky or this, that, or the other thing, that until you have that thing, you haven't done anything worthy of a high five. So why would you, on a random day, raise your hand in celebration, given the fact that you're not where you think you should be? That's what the resistance is. That's what your cynicism is. And it's become a habit. And here's the sad ass part about all this. If you think about the London Marathon, right? Even you cynical Brits, do you stand on the side with your arms crossed at mile 8 and go, hey, you fucking asshole. I'm not cheering for you. I saw how slow you were on the last split. When you cross the finish line, I'll give you a little polite clap. Fuck off. That's not what you do. You're like, you like high five them. In fact, if you've ever done a road race, it's the encouragement of strangers every step of the way.
Because we're British and we're brilliant at encouraging other people. We're absolutely horrendous at encouraging ourselves.
Everybody is. I'm like one of the most positive people that you will ever meet. And I did not know how to stand before myself until I discovered this and actually see the human being Mel Robbins, somebody who is trying, somebody who needs help, somebody who doesn't ask for help, somebody who's waiting for somebody to show up and acknowledge me and help me and read my mind. And the fact is, you have your best ally and hype squad, the person you spend your whole life with, staring back at you in the mirror, and you need to actually be that person, celebrating and high-fiving them every step of the way. And here's the science. This is why I want you to do it for 5 days. So first of all, yes, it's going to feel weird. Yes, you're going to resist it. But the moment you raise your hand and go to high-five yourself, you'll notice something. You can't high five yourself in the mirror and go, I hate my face. You can't do it. And your brain won't allow you to. And there's a reason why that can be explained by science. And this has to do with neurobics, what you were talking about, Damien. So I spent a couple hours with Dr. Daniel Amen, so the world's leading expert on the brain. When I told him about this 3 weeks ago, the guy geeked the hell out and explained to me all kinds of stuff that I didn't even realize. So he said, first of all, and this part we write about in the book based on neurobics, marrying a physical motion that's unexpected. So you never high five yourself, so it's unexpected. So that snaps your prefrontal cortex into motion, like what the heck's going on? With a positive new thought, it's the fastest way to create a new neural pathway. And so he basically said, so you guys, when you've high five people in sport or in life, or you've received one, what does the gesture of a high five, without anybody saying anything, what does it actually communicate to you?
I see you. I acknowledge you.
Human connection.
Yeah. I believe in you. I got you. Let's do this. I celebrate you. If your attitude's in the tank, shake it off. I got you. It's all of that. It's celebration. It's encouragement. It's acknowledgement. And you've been doing it for other people your entire life. So all the positive programming is already in your basal ganglia. It's already married to the motion. So when you raise your hand and you do the physical gesture, your brain recognizes it, you guys, and it overrides any critic, any habit loop associated with bashing yourself, silences it, and it overrides it with the positive programming and marries it with your reflection. Do you realize I've been doing this for a year and I don't even have to high five myself anymore? Because when I walk in front of the mirror, the critic is gone.
Wow.
Gone. I see a human being who's trying. I see a human being that I love. And I just feel that way about and it's not arrogance at all. It's just support. That's it. And so I'm not even done with the science. So hold on a second. So Dr. Daniel Amen's like, hey, Mel, you want to know what else? You want to know what else? You want to know why it feels goofy and you kind of feel a little bit better when you do it? I'm like, yeah, I do. Tell me, Dr. Amen. He said, well, because every time that somebody else high fives you, your brain gives you dopamine, the feel-good drug. When you do it to yourself, your brain recognizes the gesture and gives you a drip of dopamine, the feel-good drug. He said, you want to know why else it works? I said, yeah, I do. He said, well, because your nervous system also knows what's going on. And it jumps into the mode to help you. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, well, gestures of hugging, you're raising your arms. Pat on the back, you raise your arm. A wave hello, you raise your arm. When you cross your finish line, you raise your arms. When you high five somebody, you raise your arm. All celebratory gestures. All gestures your nervous system recognizes as celebratory. You start to do it every single day in the mirror, along with the positive programming that's already in your brain associated with it, along with the celebratory energy that is in your nervous system that boosts your mood. Your body and your brain is already conditioned, wired by a lifetime of experience to have this override your circuitry and program a new set of neural pathways and an entirely new experience that you will feel when you see and think about yourself. It's crazy.
It's amazing. So, Mel, we get a lot of teachers and parents listening to this podcast. And I was particularly taken by the line that you said about that many of us haven't been taught the skill of being kind to ourselves, which is what the book is around. So what advice would you give to those of us that are parents or those of us that are teachers about how we can start to educate children around kindness?
Well, the most powerful way to teach anybody anything is to not tell them, but to show them. It starts with you. If you stand in front of the mirror and criticize yourself, your kids are hearing you. If you say, let me get in the back of the photo because you don't like your body, your kids are hearing you. If you screw up and you're like, bloody hell, why do I always suck? Your kids are hearing you. Their brains are like little sponges absorbing your patterns of behavior. And if your patterns of behavior include being hard on yourself, criticizing yourself, hating your body, your kids hear it. And so it starts with you. That's number one. The second thing that I would say is that there's a really interesting study that we write about in chapter 2 that was mind-blowing to me that every educator and parent needs to know. Now, you guys talk about the growth mindset all the time, right? You know the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. We all know that. So researchers wondered, what is the best way to motivate somebody to tap into that sense of resilience when you're facing a challenging moment, right? And so they did this study where they divided kids into 3 groups, and they tested 3 different forms of encouragement. One of them was based in the fixed mindset stuff. So they would walk up to students and verbally tell them, you're really smart, praising a fixed trait about them, which, helps a little bit to feel encouraged, but doesn't really go the distance. The second group got the growth mindset praise, which is, of course, as we all know, praising something that you have control of, which is your effort. Oh, you're really perseverant. Oh, you're such a hard worker. I really admire that. The third group, the researchers didn't say a thing. They just gave the kids a high five. That's it. Just a simple, ordinary high five. No verbal praise at all. Those kids that got a high five during a challenging task, those kids outworked both of those groups, felt better about themselves, worked longer, pushed through more challenges. The researchers were so blown away that they changed the title of the study when it was published in Frontiers of Psychology, the research magazine, to the motivational power of a high five. And the question is, why? Why is it more motivating than verbal praise? Well, the reason why a high five is so motivating is because it fulfills a human being's most foundational emotional needs. When you high five somebody, whether it's yourself or your kid, when they're going through a challenging moment, first of all, you hear them because the high five says, I get it. This sucks. Like when my husband started doing this, he still felt like a failure. The high five doesn't say, you're awesome. The high five says, I get it. There have been some things that have really gone wrong. And guess what? I'm still here for you. I still believe in you. That's what it's doing. So when you high five a kid going through a challenge, you're acknowledging that this is hard, but you're also transferring the energy of your belief back to them. It's a shared celebration in your ability to face this moment. And I'm here to tell you, you can build that partnership with yourself. Like right now at the beginning of a school year, what goes viral? All of those moments where teachers create individual handshakes and high fives with kids going into the classroom. Why do we all love that? Well, because innately we know that each one of those kids feels seen and feels important. They don't feel ignored. They don't feel like they just, there's no reason for them to be there. They feel like they matter. That is the most important thing for your kids and for you to feel that they matter. And so I think that A, you should certainly be adopting the high five, and B, you should be modeling this. Because one of the other things that I write about in this book, and since you brought up kids, I'm going to read a text message from one of my daughters who is 21 years old, and she is a junior in college. And she is at a music conservatory studying, she's a singer-songwriter. She's at a music conservatory at the University of Southern California. And she texted me the other day, and I think our text exchange is illustrative of not only the power of this, but of the resistance that everybody feels. So she says, hey, Mom, are you getting excited about your new book? I can't wait to read it. By the way, I've been high-fiving myself in the mirror just to show you this is real. I can't, it's not focusing, but this is what I'm reading from. And I said, how's the high five working? And she said, well, I really don't know what to say when I do it. Because sometimes I still stand and look in the mirror, and the first thing I think is, you're not as pretty as the rest of the girls. And I said, well, you actually don't need to say anything. The high five will silence that thought and communicate everything that you need for you. And she said, but what if I didn't accomplish anything? Like I didn't work out today, or I didn't write a song like I said I would. Do I still high five myself after the shower? I said, absolutely. You got to keep showing up every day trying to do a little better. That alone makes you worthy of support and celebration. You see, we have the secret to life and happiness and motivation backwards. You think you need to accomplish something to be worthy of a high five. And she says, wait a minute. Are you saying the fact that I exist deserves a high five? Like it just makes me. And I said, yeah. When you high five yourself for just standing there in front of the mirror, you are demonstrating that you see you and all your potential, and you still support you and you believe in you, and that no matter what happens today, you've got your own back. And I said, well, what do you think about what I just wrote, Ken? And she said, I love it. It makes me feel great. And then I wrote this. Can you explain why it makes you feel great? Because maybe what you say is going to help me explain this to everybody else. And she said, well, what the high five shows you is that you don't actually know how much you're always doing. And I think that once you start high-fiving yourself every single morning, it almost allows you to be more present to everything you're doing. And it helps you recognize all those small victories. And when you compile those small victories, you can actually recognize all of your accomplishments, big and small, and eventually come to believe that not only are you worth it, but you can do anything.
Oh man.
Wow.
That's moving. And by the way, thanks very much for sharing, the personal message between you and your daughter. So interesting the way it makes you reframe your thinking, though, isn't it? Because I've been sitting here thinking about high fives, and when I high five people in my life, and I high five my kids exactly as you've just said, when something great happens. And then I thought about what you were saying about the NBA at the very beginning. When do they high five each other? At the start of the game. They haven't even won the game, but the first thing they're doing before they even tip off is high fiving each other. And I think there's a really strong message there for people to share that high five as your kids walk out the door in the morning, as your husband or wife wake up. And it also leads me to ask the question, my kids, I know I spend all my time lifting up my kids because they're my children and I want them to be resilient, and but I think it's probably been a long time since I high-fived my wife. And I think there's it's worth us all thinking, isn't it? About, of course, it's good to be good to ourselves and good to the people that we feel need it.
Meditation trains you to not react to your thoughts. That's what meditation trains you to do. A thought comes in, you're a piece of shit. That's what the thought is. And you don't go, you're right, I'm a piece of shit. Just go, oh, interesting. There it goes. Goodbye. You just let thoughts come up and you let them go down. You're training yourself in the science of not reacting to those thoughts, to separating yourself from the narrative in your head. Would you like to add anything? Oh, expert in meditation. No, seriously. I mean, like, Chris is way more of a meditation guru than I am.
Well, earlier you talked about the importance of just being self-aware, and that's also just a fringe benefit of meditation, because the more you do it, the more you, to your point, you just become aware of these thoughts or messages or whatever may be flowing through your head, and just the act of being aware of it.
Okay, now let me tell you why the high five habit is a motherfucking game changer. You ready, everybody? You ready? What about tough love? I'm going to get you there in a minute, because I think tough love is horse. Honesty and the high five habit are your winning formula. You will never change your life by beating yourself up. Does not work, period. Please explain to me how shaming yourself actually makes you feel motivated. It doesn't. All the research shows that when you're an asshole to yourself, tough love, hard on yourself, that it's demoralizing. Even Goggins, okay, who I love, I love David Goggins. Give it up for David Goggins. Even David Goggins has a positive, encouraging philosophy when the shit's hitting the fan. If you haven't read Can't Hurt Me, phenomenal book. And what is the metaphor he uses as he's running his 100-mile races and his feet are bleeding and he's like, basically ready to die as he's doing it? The cookie jar. He literally visualizes going into a mental cookie jar and grabbing a cookie, which is a positive thought about why you're running this 100-mile race. It's like a mental high five. It's encouraging and supporting and celebrating you in going forward. He doesn't sit there and go, you motherfucker, he doesn't say that to himself. He encourages himself. You have to fight to believe in yourself. Life belittles you. Other people criticize you. You got to be your biggest cheerleader, and you've never been trained how. So this is where the high five habit comes in, and this is why it was different than meditation. Meditation helps you separate yourself from your thoughts. Meditation helps you become non-reactive to your thoughts. Meditation increases self-awareness. The high five habit and everything that I'm writing about in this new book, everyone, overrides the default negative programming in your mind. And it programs in positive and empowering programming related to you. Let me explain the science behind this, because this is crazy. And I can say this with this much passion because I've researched this now for over a year. I've talked to the world's leading experts in neuroscience, in habits, in human behavior. Everybody that I've done a podcast with, from Ed Millett to Tom Bilyeu to Dr. Daniel Amen to Lewis Howes to Jenna Kutchner to Almost 30, to, the list goes on. We're doing 60 podcast interviews. Jay Shetty is next week, Brendan Burchard, everybody, Dave Hollis is tomorrow, Fern Cotton in the UK is tomorrow. It's just going on and on and on. I mean, we've got Trent Shelton coming up. We've got
Anthony Truck's coming up. Like it's so many. Glow Autonom. I mean, just Hoya Webb. I'm going to just talk to everybody about this because everybody that hears it goes, holy shit, this is unbelievable, Mel. Here's why the high five habit is what you need. Think about what a high five means. And remember, the book is called The High Five Habit. When you buy it, go to highfivehabit.com. Buy it today. You need this book. This is the book you need right now because the last 18 months have beaten the shit out of you. So you now need habits of picking yourself up and encouraging yourself as you pivot and you move forward. So here's why this is so powerful. For your entire life, as you've been high-fiving everybody else, the gesture has communicated, I believe in you, I celebrate you, I see you, I love you, you got this, I got your back. All that programming is already in your subconscious brain. So guess what happens when you stand in front of the mirror and you look at yourself, the person that you criticize or you ignore, and you raise your hand and high-five yourself? What do you think happens when you do that same gesture to yourself? Guess what? Your brain recognizes the gesture. It flips into your subconscious and goes, oh, we believe in this person. Oh, we love this person. We celebrate this person. It's freaking bananas. It shuts off your inner critic. In fact, it's impossible. Go to a mirror when we're done and try to high-five yourself. Two things are going to happen. First of all, you can't be like, I suck, and high-five yourself. It's neurologically impossible. Your brain will not allow it to happen because it cannot and will not associate that hand gesture with anything but I love you and I believe in you and let's do this. It's already programmed in your mind. The second thing that you're going to feel is resistance. You're going to think this is weird. And let me tell you something, that resistance is sad. That resistance is all of your shame. It's everything that's ever been done to you. It is all of your judgment. It's the fact that you don't think you are where you should be in life. And so as you're about to high-five yourself, you're going to resist doing it because you don't believe you deserve it. And see, I'm here to tell you that's sad. And the other thing I'm here to tell you is...
So when you look in the mirror and you say, because I've done this, and you give yourself a high five, and immediately the thought is, well, this is so stupid.
Yes.
You're saying what's behind that belief and the act of giving a high five is stupid is actually your own shame.
Yes.
Disbelief.
Yes. Tell her, when you looked in the mirror, as you're starting to high-five, because you're working on stuff, when you look in a mirror, what's the nasty-ass shit you have said about you, Chris Robbins, for years?
Well, that doesn't...
Answer. Can you answer the question so people understand that even though we're a cute couple, which people keep saying, that Chris Robbins was a heavy guy. For years, you'd look in the mirror because your restaurant business failed and you feel like you had a failed career. You would see a person who what?
Was not good enough.
Was not good enough. Was a failure. Oop, the wind from the AC. Turning off the AC.
But
hold on. I want people to hear you say it because what would Chris Robbins think and say about himself?
That you're a failure.
You're a failure. So does a person who believes that they're a failure deserve a high five?
Of course not.
That's why you resist it, and that's why you say this is weird. It's because of your own opinion about yourself. Chris said he felt like a failure, which is why when he went to high-five himself, it felt weird because you don't high-five somebody that you think is a failure. So what I'm here to tell you is I need you to try it for 5 days. I need you to try it for 5 days. And yeah, I see. I need to make money. I need to do this. I need to lose the weight. Do you think that you're more likely to make more money and lose the weight if you're supporting yourself or if you're standing in front of the mirror beating the out of yourself? Huh? True. Yeah, I know. It's so obvious. It's a miracle that nobody. Laura's on day 2 of doing it. It's a miracle nobody has actually taught us this. Chris, what did you want to say, darling? I just wanted people to understand that this shit is deep. And even people that you look at that are like, oh, they got it all together. The stuff you say to yourself, all of us, it's terrible. So what were you going to say, hon?
No, I'm just drawing from this that if you, behind your suggestion is do this, but what happens is when you are doing it, often what goes through your head is, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? And what you're saying is, look deeper, because what's behind that belief that it's stupid is one or many negative thoughts or stories that you have about yourself.
Correct. All of which are one story. I don't deserve a high five. I don't deserve a high five because I haven't done anything worthy of a high five, or I believe that because of my past, I'm not worthy, or nor do I deserve one.
Well,
And-
like this morning I got up
Yep.
and I gave myself a high five.
Oh.
And what went through my head was that this is stupid because I'm just giving myself a high five because my thought pattern was, I said I was going to get up at 5:30 to exercise. I did get up at 5:30.
Yep.
So I gave myself a high five for having gotten up.
Great.
But I still said, this is f***ing stupid. Why am I
Okay.
doing this?
It didn't feel good at all?
Well, no. I mean, yes, but I'm just saying that shaking that belief that
Yes.
this is silly
Yes.
is...
Do you know how hard, nobody realizes how watch this kid on the bike, sweetheart. I
No hands on the steering.
Well, yeah, he's got great balance. He's like riding down the road, no hands on his bike, holding the phone in his ear. You are the hardest person I know on themselves. So I think if I get out of bed and exercise at 5:30 in the morning, I not only deserve a high five, I need a marching band to celebrate that shit. You're like, I dragged my ass out of bed at 5:30. I tried to high five myself, and now it's stupid because I should be doing this. No.
That's true.
Bring a sense of celebration and enthusiasm. Support yourself, everyone. The high five habit is no different. Okay, so I find myself last year at a very low moment. I am standing in my bathroom. It's a moment I know every woman can relate to. There in my underwear. I'm looking in the mirror. And of course, I am picking myself apart. I'm like, I hate how I'm getting really jowly right here. And I don't like how I've got these like big lines that are starting. And then I notice, I've got this like indent right here that I don't like. And I don't like these like kind of marks right here that go this way on my neck. I've covered them up with foundation.
I never even realized.
Yeah,
Like, I'm
and
like,
then
what
this
is she
boob
talking
hangs
about?
lower than the other boob. And I'm just picking myself apart because that's what I've been doing for the past 4 decades. That's what almost all women and even men do it too. This is what I'm finding based on the research of the book. And then as soon as my mind is negative about my appearance, my mind goes negative about my day. Oh, God, I forgot to text Lisa back. I need to finish up that report. Oh, my gosh, my first Zoom meeting is in 9. Oh, the dog needs to be walked. And now I'm going down the road negative about the day. The whole vibe is, ugh. And I don't know what came over me, but I just literally had nothing to say to myself. I really felt overwhelmed, just an average low moment. And I found myself, as pathetic as it sounds, raising my hand and high-fiving my own reflection in the mirror, braless in my underwear. It felt good. I put my shoulders back. I felt a little bit like, okay, I got this. And I went on with my day. The next day, there I am again. And my mind is going negative. And I'm like, nope, high five. And that's what the high five habit is. But this is just the beginning. The high five habit book is full of a bazillion tools. But I want to unpack this one because there's so much science here. And for women in particular, this is unbelievable in how it changes you and your relationship with yourself. So first, let's start with a high five. Think about when in your life you have either given or received high fives. What does a high five from someone else or a high five that you're giving to somebody else communicate?
You're on the same team. You're like in it together.
Yeah. And, it's also like, I think about it, you give it to somebody before a big play. We got this. You give it to somebody when their attitude's going down. Come on, keep going, pick your attitude up.
You give it to somebody in celebration. And so a high five communicates support and empowerment and partnership and trust and celebration. And it's so powerful, and we're so good at giving all of those things to other people. Like you and everybody, especially women. We cheer for our friends. We create birthday parties. We buy people presents. We do work for our colleagues when they're overwhelmed. We help our parents out with whatever. We're so good at cheering for our favorite musicians and buying people stuff. We are horrendous at giving that same support and celebration to ourselves. In fact, we not only don't give ourselves support and celebration, we do the opposite. We tear ourselves down, and we beat ourselves up, and we pick ourselves apart. And every single woman I know is constantly saying, how the fuck do I put myself first? How do I love myself? I know I'm supposed to. Well, I'll tell you how you do it. You put yourself first by doing for yourself what you've been doing for everybody else, because that's how everybody else became first in your life. You need to start to cheer for, support, and validate yourself, period. I realize now that I'm high-fiving myself that I have spent the first 40 years of my life either criticizing my reflection or ignoring it. How sad is that?
It's incredibly heartbreaking and yet extremely familiar to me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of women.
Yeah. And believe it or not, a lot of men. There's a lot of men that don't want to look themselves in the eye in a mirror and be with themselves because they're so focused on the things that they haven't achieved or the things that they failed at. And so they're ignoring themselves. They're not being with themselves. And so first things first, when you take a moment in the morning to just stand in front of the mirror and be with yourself, and then you raise your hand in a gesture that you have always associated with celebration, support, belief, and empowerment with other people, there's a number of things that happen that can be proven by research. First things first, this is research out of Harvard. It's recent. They've shown in studies that simply taking a minute in the morning to get intentional about who you're going to be today and how you're going to show up changes your productivity. It changes your level of confidence. It changes how impactful you are as a leader at work and in life. So this moment in the mirror is not to be diminished. This is a moment for you to be able to take a moment and intentionally align yourself with who you're going to be. Second piece of research is from a field of study called Neurobionics. It basically means when you marry a physical action with something, a thought that's unexpected, you accelerate the development of new neural pathways. And there's famous studies that have proven that if you brush with like your non-dominant hand while you're thinking something, it sticks in your mind because you have to focus. Well, the same is true when you raise your hand and high-five your own reflection. You see, you've been doing this for your entire lifetime. So there's already subconscious programming here, Lisa. The second that you raise your hand like this, it is so programmed in your mind to associate belief, cheering, empowerment, celebration, with the high five itself, that it's impossible to go, God, I hate my neck. Boy, is that cellulite ugly. You can't do it because this part of the mind immediately takes over and does all the positive stuff with a high five. It's crazy. Try it tomorrow morning. You will not be able to criticize yourself. Now there's another piece of research around this, which is, when you do a high five, we did one, the first one we did, right? We didn't quite hit each other in the right, good smack. So what did we do?
We did it.
Correct. Because a good high five requires you to be present and intentional. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
All of that in a little high five. And so what I started to notice was that I was in real time shifting my relationship to myself. Instead of criticizing the woman I saw in the mirror or ignoring her, I was developing a partnership, a trust, a sense of self-validation, I have my own back. I see you, Mel Robbins. We're going to have a great day today. We got this. No matter what it is that life is going to throw at us, you got this. That's how it all started. And then, of course, I put it on my story after a couple weeks of doing it, and people around the world started to post pictures of themselves doing it, and then all of their stories started rolling in about the difference that it was making. There was one woman that said that she's been struggling with body dysmorphia for 20 years, cannot look in the mirror, and after 5 days of doing this, can stare at herself in the eyes with a grin.
5 days.
5 days. And the reason why is because of the lifetime association that you have with doing this for other people. So when you try this tomorrow, here's what I want you to do. Stand in front of your bathroom mirror and take a moment and just be with yourself for a second. And then if there's resistance to raising your hand and high-fiving your own reflection, what is that resistance? The coolest thing about the high five is this. First of all, I am demanding that you try it, especially if you think it's stupid as hell. I want you to stand in front of the mirror. Number one, because research out of Harvard says taking a moment of reflection with yourself in the morning and setting an intention changes your productivity, it changes your neurochemistry, it changes how you show up for the day, it changes everything. That's number one. Number two, you have a lifetime of looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing what you hate. I want to change that. When you raise your hand and high-five your own reflection, because you have been raising your hand and high-fiving other people for your entire life, it is already programmed into your subconscious. All of that shit that's positive. I believe in you. We got this. Come on, shake it off. Well, let's get going. Here we go. I see you. I hear you. I celebrate you. All that stuff you've been doing for other people, when you raise that hand, the subconscious part of your brain kicks in and it overrides all of the negative stuff you think. You cannot stand in front of that mirror, Rich, and go, God, I look fat, and high-five yourself. It's impossible. Your brain can't do it.
Right.
You also can't think about work emails. You also can't think about what's stressing you out. And here's the thing that I also love about it. So this is a field of study called neurobics. You're marrying physical movement with a change in thought. The other thing that
It's like neurology aerobics.
It is.
Basically.
It's exactly what it is.
I found that part of the book fascinating. Yeah. I mean, I think, look, you're taking this very simple action that we all associate with positive things that's backed up by, the neurochemistry with this mirror work, which has a tradition in psychology in the field of like cultivating self-love. It's not like the idea of looking in the mirror and doing the Stuart Smalley thing. Like there's science and research behind this to cultivate appreciation for the self.
Yes. And so there's even more here. So the other stuff that's super cool about this is that, we've all bought into this lie that somehow beating yourself up and tough love and being hard on yourself is motivating. Wrong. All the research shows that it is demotivating. If you're somebody that's stuck, if you're somebody that has regrets, if you're somebody that is tired of where you are, if you feel like, why can't I change? Beating yourself up is making it worse. You have to learn how to cheer for yourself where you are. Because if you're not, you will never find the motivation to change. So they did this study with kids where they broke kids into 3 different groups, okay? And they gave the kids very challenging problems. And they wanted to know what was going to be the thing that researchers could do to motivate and inspire kids to work through a challenging problem, and what is going to be the most effective thing that we could do to give somebody that boost that you need to really face something that's hard. So group number 1 got the old fixed mindset praise, where it's like, hey, you're super smart, Rich. Hey, Rich, you're really good looking in those glasses, and I bet they help you make you focus on this problem. Keep going, buddy. The second group got the fixed mindset praise, which is, hey, Rich, you're really, really working hard. Rich, that perseverance is amazing. Keep going. The third group, they got a simple high five. No words, just a high five. The group with the simple high five outperformed the other 2 group and then some.
That's
why?
So crazy.
Why? I'll tell you why. A high five is fulfilling your fundamental emotional needs. It's not about the problem. When you high five somebody, including yourself, you are affirming that somebody exists. You are saying, I see you, and you're celebrating with them. You know how those things go viral all year long of teachers standing outside their classroom doing individual handshakes with kids?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of those kids is being seen as an individual and celebrated.
There's also that study of the NBA teams, right?
Yes.
Where they basically looked at how many high fives all the teams were doling out.
Fist bumps, yeah, touching.
And the teams that were giving out the most high fives were the highest performing teams.
Yes, and
That's crazy.
The teams that had the least amount of contact like that, of fist bumps and high fives and back taps, performed the worst. Why? Because you're building trust with whomever you're high-fiving. You see, when you stand in front of the mirror and instead of going, God, my jowls look like saddlebags and I'm fucked today because my to-do list is so long and, and I shouldn't have had that, that sets your mind and your day on a certain course.
Yeah.
When you walk into the bathroom and you habit stack this simple high five along with brushing your teeth, you are starting your day by fulfilling your most important needs. You see yourself, you affirm yourself, you celebrate yourself. And for those of you that feel stuck, part of your problem is you are withholding that shit from yourself until you get to the number of the scale, until you get that job, until you do the thing you're supposed to do. And what you are doing is backwards. You need support, celebration, and acknowledgement now in order to hit that number on the scale. You see, most of us believe we're not worthy of celebration until we achieve something. And I'm here to tell you, if you start celebrating, supporting yourself as you are every single day, it will become a part of who you are, which empowers and equips you to face the shitty things. And more importantly, empowers and equips you to do the things that scare you that you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're going to start today is we're going to start with a tool and a habit that I call high-fiving your heart. And there's a particular reason why we're going to start with this tool. And I want you to make this a daily habit. And I'm going to explain how you do it. I'm going to explain the science. I'm going to teach you why this is essential for you to be doing every day in order to maintain focus, in order to maintain connection with yourself, and in order to build what I call body confidence. Body confidence is feeling comfortable in your own skin. Body confidence is being able to root yourself and ground yourself in your own body when life tries to hijack you. This has nothing to do with your appearance. This has to do with what it feels like to be you living your life. So here's what you're going to feel.
Yeah.
When you do it, it's very simple. You're going to look at yourself in the mirror and you're going to leverage some research out of Harvard.
We'll talk about that too. Yeah, I want
Okay.
to dive into that.
So you're basically just going to look at yourself in the mirror and you're going to ask yourself, what does that human being need from me today? How can I show up for him or her or they? How do I do that today? Kindness? Do I need to be more courageous or bold? You kind of set this intention for yourself. And then you're simply going to raise your hand and you're going to high five yourself. Now, a couple things I want you to expect. Number one, it will feel weird, period. It feels weird for everybody because it is the opposite of what you're doing right now. And so your brain is going to reject it as odd. Number two, you're either going to have one of two reactions. That's it. There's no middle ground. You will either have a very profound positive experience where you're going to laugh, probably because it kind of feels good and it's kind of silly, or you're going to burst into tears in a positive way because it's a release that you have finally woken up and started supporting yourself. You just got it. And that's where the tears come from. But more likely, although maybe not for you because you're a fan of this podcast, but more likely you will feel resistance. And the resistance is the dust on the mirror. Every single morning, Jay, we bring with us our entire past. Whatever's been done to you, whether it's trauma or discrimination or abuse or neglect or abandonment, it is standing between you and the mirror. It's the dust. And you see that dust and you say, that means that I am not worthy. I am not lovable. So you see a human being that's distorted and you say to yourself, because of what's happened, I don't deserve a high five. Or if you're a human being, you've done a ton of stuff that you regret. And so all the things that wish you could change, that you would forgive Jay or you'd forgive Mel Robbins for, you cannot forgive yourself. It's more dust. And so you stand there and you say, because of all that stuff that I did, I'm unworthy or I'm unlovable or I'm this or I'm that. And that dust keeps you from seeing a human being who deserves support and celebration. Or another form of the dust, which is the resistance, is that you actually believe that you do not deserve to be celebrated or supported unless you have the bank account or the number on the scale, or you drive in the car or live in the neighborhood, or your hair is less kinky, or you're this or you're that. And so you withhold the very support and celebration that you need in order to change your life from you because you haven't done it yet. That's where the resistance comes from. And so I'm here to say you got to try this for 5 days because it's going to feel weird. You're going to resist it. And what's going to happen is you'll notice as you raise your hand, and this is where the science gets amazing. As you raise your hand, Jay, you will go from thinking this is weird or thinking this is stupid to silence. And this is explained by science. There is a field of study called neurobics. Neurobics is a word that I did not invent. It is aerobic or physical movement with new neural pathway development. And research has shown that when you use neurobics, it is the fastest way to form new neural pathways. So the way that you do it is you take an unexpected physical movement, like high-fiving yourself, something you've never done, and you marry it with a thought. Now, here's where things get crazy cool. You've been high-fiving people your whole life. You've been receiving high fives your whole life. So Jay, when you high-five somebody, what are you communicating through the gesture?
A feeling of connectedness, a feeling of support, a feeling of I'm congratulating you or celebrating you, a feeling of you've got this, like that kind of feeling.
Yeah, completely. All of it is programmed in your subconscious brain. When you go to raise your hand to high five somebody, I can never high five Jay and go, you're a jerk. Jay, I don't like you. Jay, I hope your tea, which I'm a founding club member of, really fails. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Because the programming is already in your brain.
Yes.
So you cannot look at yourself in the mirror and think terrible things while you're high-fiving yourself because your brain won't allow it.
Right.
It is programmed to think something different. And as you repeat this every day, just 5 days, dear God, give me 5 days of doing this, you will override the critic and you will reprogram your mind to associate belief, love, encouragement, support, resilience with your own reflection. This is why I don't even see myself in terms of a body anymore. I see a human being that I love, that I support, just like I would a friend or a child that I love unconditionally. It's mind-blowing, but that's not all. So I talked to our pal, Dr. Daniel Amen, and this isn't even in the book. This is just something I learned 2 weeks ago. He went bananas when I talked about this thing. So Jay, when you high-five somebody else, your brain drips dopamine. The reason why when you do this, even on a low morning, you get a boost in your mood and a little bit of clarity is you get a drip of dopamine by high-fiving yourself. Again, because the programming is already in your brain. You're just now turning it from everybody else and giving it to yourself.
Yeah.
And there's a second thing that's super cool. So Dr. Amen was explaining, he said, Mel, when you leave the bathroom, you feel kind of peppy, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of weird. He said, well, let me tell you what that is. He said, your nervous system is encoded with celebratory energy. When you wave hello, you're raising your arms. When you cross a finish line, you raise your arms. When you hug somebody, you raise your arms. When you high-five somebody, you raise your arms. When you do this every morning, especially when you're going through a challenging moment, your nervous system recognizes the celebratory gesture and gives you a jolt of energy. Is that not incredible? This is a really profound moment in my life and a major turning point. And, it's not a pandemic moment, but in order to kind of give you the backdrop of what was going on in my life, and given that at the time that you and I are talking, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, I'll just tell you what was going on in my life, at least to the extent I can, based on what the lawyers tell me. No, I'm just kidding. I had been, everybody knows the moment that their life turned upside down because of COVID. whether you got news that the office was closing, or you couldn't go see your, grandmom or dad, or you, were quarantined with your kids and they were in a state of distress, there was that moment. And for me, what happened is I was taping a daytime talk show here in the United States, and they found COVID at the CBS Broadcast Center in New York. And they walked into the taping room and said, you need to evacuate the building. And within 5 minutes notice, Fern, my show was canceled. I was fired from what had always been a dream job of mine. I grew up, coming home from school, my mom would have Oprah Winfrey or Donahue on here in the United States. And I always wanted to do that and to help people doing it. And so 5 minutes, grab everything you can that's not nailed down, run out the door. Don't even say goodbye to the 130 people I'd worked with for a year. I get in the car, I start driving to Boston. I see the New York City skyline disappearing in the rearview mirror. And, Boston, Massachusetts is where my husband and I live. And then the phone calls start coming in. My daughter's in college in California. They're closing school. What's happening? What's happening? My other daughter's in Spain. I can't get a flight. I can't, and the whole world starts to close down, and we all felt it. So I get home, and those first 3 weeks were basically a blur of alcohol and living in my pajamas and watching Harry Potter, no kidding, on repeat with the kids. There were aspects of it that were fun, but what happened in those 3 weeks is I lost my dream job. My book publisher canceled my book and then told me I had to return the money they had given us, money I'd already spent. Every speech I had for a year started to cancel, and I started to get flashbacks to a moment in my life when my husband and I were nearly $1 million in debt. This was 13 years ago. This is sort of my origin story. We were about to lose everything. And that's when I invented this thing called the 5-second rule. But I started having these flashbacks. We are fucked. Like, this is happening again. Are you kidding me? I'm 52 years old. I've got to reinvent my freaking life again. And one morning I wake up and I use the 5-second rule. You count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I get out of bed. And the anxiety is thumping through me. And I make my bed and I drag myself to the bathroom. And I'm standing there brushing my teeth in my underwear. And I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror. And I think, oh my God, you look like hell. And I had these dark circles under my eyes, and my gray hair was coming in, and I looked haggard and tired. I actually felt sorry for the woman I saw reflected back in the mirror, because I could tell she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. She was worried about her kids who were grieving and anxious and distressed. She was worried about herself, her employees. She was worried about the world and the frontline workers and her parents and her business and everything. And as soon as your thoughts go negative, it's like lint catching in a dryer. More and more and more negativity builds. And so then I started thinking about the day. And who doesn't start their day by going, I'm late, I forgot to do the text, today's going to suck. And then I look at my feet and there's my dog and he still needs to be walked. And I need to be on a Zoom call in 8 minutes. And I just look like bloody hell. And I'm starting to feel heavier and heavier. And what's interesting, Fern, is if you had walked into the bathroom in that moment, I would have been able to spin on a dime and be like, come on, Fern, you got this. You're awesome. I know this sucks, but come on, let's just take it one step at a time. You can face this. But standing there with myself, alone in my underwear, one boob hanging lower than the other, like I couldn't think of anything to say because I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel optimistic. I didn't feel like I could handle what was happening. And as cheesy as it sounds, standing there without a bra on, I found myself just raising my hand and high-fiving the woman I saw in the mirror. Now, here's what's interesting. Almost immediately, I felt my shoulders drop. I chuckled because it's so stupid and cheesy to high-five yourself in the mirror. And it didn't disappear the problems. It didn't change all the stuff I was dealing with, but something inside of me changed. I felt this sense of, okay, I know this sucks. Pick your chin up, Mel. You got this. Come on. and I sent myself into the day. Now, it was the second day that something really interesting happened, because what happened on the second day is when I woke up, I immediately thought about that high five. I 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, got out of bed. I made my bed. And as I was walking toward the bathroom, I felt something I'd never felt in my entire life. And I'm going to explain it this way. You know, when you're about to go see a friend, you're going to grab a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or something, and you're about to walk into that cafe, and you feel this sense of excitement that you're going to see somebody you like. And, you know, I felt that as I was sitting, you know, kind of waiting for us to connect. I was so excited to talk to you. As I walked into that bathroom, I felt this sense that I was about to see somebody that I like. Now, I'm going to be 53 years old this year. I think for the first 45 years of my life, I have either criticized the woman I've seen in the mirror or I have ignored her. I have looked forward to seeing outfits that I'm wearing or makeup that I've put on. I have never looked forward to seeing myself.
No, I haven't. I mean, there's an awkwardness. There's a real awkwardness about, because when I was reading this section of your book, I was like, why have I never seen myself in the mirror? I've looked at myself. I've gone, oh, that's what I don't like about it. And there's that. And I can improve that with some eyeliner, whatever. But I've never seen myself. And the beauty of that moment you've just described is seeing yourself was a moment where you hijacked the usual judgment that is just so omnipresent. We don't even think about it. It's just there all the time. When any of us look in the mirror, we go straight to the points we don't like. But you bypass that to empathy. And that is so rare, that we look at ourselves with compassion and that we go, because, you know, the high five habit isn't going like, yeah, you're amazing, you rock. It's, I see you, this is really hard. I get that it's really hard, and it's okay. It's okay to find it hard.
Yes.
But we don't look at ourselves in the mirror like that. Like, I tried after reading the book and I was like, this is so fucking weird. I'm looking at myself. It's really awkward. What is that awkwardness?
Oh, okay. This is so sad. Okay. This is really sad. So, you know, I'm going to tell everybody right now, you have to do this 5 mornings in a row, because you will feel resistance and you'll feel exactly what Fern's talking about. You'll feel this awkwardness and this weirdness and this tremendous sense of discomfort. And I want to unpack this on multiple levels, because what that resistance represents is so profoundly sad. And this is what the enormous opportunity is when you start to practice habits of encouragement, of empowerment, of self-love and self-celebration. So first things first, none of us have ever been taught how to truly see ourselves, support ourselves, love ourselves, and be kind to ourselves. We have not. We have encouraged our children to do that. We do it for them. But at some point, you stop listening to your parents and you start criticizing yourself. And so first things first, it's weird and awkward because you've never been taught how to do this. So it's not a habit. Your habit is the exact opposite. And as we know, whether you are trying to create a new habit of eating healthy or not drinking so much or knocking off the caffeine or getting out of bed early, you resist it and it feels weird because it's new. So that's reason number one, but that's not the sad reason. That's the scientific reason. The real reason why you cannot stand in front of the mirror and be with yourself, where you are, how you're feeling in this exact moment of your life, is because you drag your entire past to that moment. Everything that you regret, everything that you're disappointed about, everything that you have survived, the abuse, the trauma, the confusion, the heartbreak, all of your hopes and dreams that have not been realized yet.
Yeah.
They are with you in that moment. You do not see a person who is trying. You do not see a person who is worthy of celebration because of what you have survived in your life. You see somebody who is damaged because of that. You see somebody who is a failure because you're not where you're supposed to be. You see all of the things that you're not instead of all of the things that you are. And so that resistance and that weirdness and that judgment is actually rejection. It is judgment. It is disappointment. And here's the next layer of this. And this is why this habit, while cheesy on its face, I think is the most powerful thing that you could possibly do in your life in terms of adopting a new behavior. We have made the mistake as human beings of believing that you are only worthy of celebration and support when you achieve something that is worthy of celebration and support. So here you are standing with yourself every morning in judgment. The scale, doesn't have the number on it that it needs to be. My bank account isn't where it needs to be. My relationship isn't where it needs to be. My, career isn't where it needs to be. My mental health isn't where it needs to be. And you stand there and judge that. And then you go, cross your arms and go, well, I'm not going to cheer for that person until they get there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just stand there and judge you.
Yeah.
So get out there, you loser, and see if you can lose that weight. Like, it's literally insane. If you watch the marathon in London and those racers are running by, even Brits aren't standing there with their arms crossed going, bloody hell, you suck. I'm not clapping for your ass until you cross the finish line. No, you clap and you cheer people every step of the way. Your life is a marathon, and you have outsourced the single most motivational and important thing that you need to other people. You're waiting for your spouse or your kids or your parents or your colleagues or your friends or your boss to cheer for you and to validate you. I'm sitting here telling you, you have to learn how to validate yourself and cheer for yourself where you are right now, or you're not going to get where you're meant to go.
No, because, that's what we've been, I guess, more recently taught with social media, or certainly encouraged, that unless there's outside validation, you do not exist, which is a terrifying thought, because if you are solely relying on exterior validation, then when it eventually dissipates or there's a break in it, you're free falling. What are you going to do? So that is a huge problem. But going back one layer, looking at all the judgment and all the past that we lug around, because I recognize that in myself. I'll look in the mirror and I'll conflate my own thoughts about myself with other words spoken from people I've met along the way, or strangers, whatever it might be. And I am, pulling that along in a massive sledge behind me, like every morning. How do we, because everyone's got that. And I'm thinking people at home are going to be like, yeah, I have that. But how are we moving past that? How are we not bringing our whole past and our lump of regret with us each morning? How do we move on? Because, I know obviously sometimes with tricky situations in life, you might have had good intent, but others have still judged you, or you've ended up in a tricky spot. But there will still be times in our past where we acted without good intent. And we know that we did something out of jealousy or cruelty or whatever it might be, of just feeling angry about our own lives. So how do we let that go when we know that good intent wasn't anywhere near that situation? How the hell are we stepping over that massive pile of crap?
Well, I think that, I think especially your listeners know that you act out in pain because you didn't know any other way to cope. And so when you can bring empathy and understanding to what happened to you, you can start to understand the behavior. And it's only when you understand the behavior from the past that you can spot it and you can catch it and you can change it, because patterns of behavior repeat unless you break them and replace them. And so one of the reasons why this high five habit, and it's just one of a bazillion habits in this book that we can talk about to address this question. One of the reasons why high-fiving your reflection in the mirror works is because you don't have to think anything. This is the genius of it. So, when it started to work for me, and then I, of course, put a photo on social media on my story, and within an hour, 100 people, men, women, children around the world were high-fiving and tagging themselves. I thought, okay, whoa. First of all, I'm not the only one who's feeling like the world on my shoulders. Okay, that's reassuring. And secondly, maybe this thing isn't that cheesy after all. And so I've spent the last year researching this. And so first, let me explain, in addressing your question about how do you get your mind to stop going down the road of beating the shit out of yourself for all the stuff that you did when you were just trying to survive. Because that's what you were trying to do. You were just trying to survive. And I have been startled, Fern. You know, I was molested when I was in the 4th grade, and it was a one-time incident. I woke up in the middle of the night at a big family thing with lots of different families, and all the kids were in one room, and there was an older kid on top of me. And it is that moment that my anxiety began. I literally had a fight or flight response, which is all that anxiety is. Anxiety in your body is just an alarm bell going off when your nervous system goes into a sympathetic or an on edge alarm state. And I possummed, I disassociated, I literally left my body. And that next morning I woke up knowing that something was wrong, knowing that something bad had happened. And in that moment, my nervous system was still on alarm. And when I walked downstairs that morning, my mom was cooking breakfast. The kids were all over the kitchen, lots of other moms around. And my mom turned to me and said, "How'd you sleep, honey?" And I froze. And I froze because the kid was sitting at the kitchen table. Now, I knew if I said something, my mother, she's a farm gal. She grew up on a cattle farm. She would literally take that spatula and hit him into next week. Like, there was no concern about my mom. I was concerned about what this person would do. And so my nervous system in that moment got hardwired to be on edge, to be worried about how people react. And I have lived in that state for literally ever since 45 years. And so one of the things that happens, we're going to talk about our nervous system, because there's also a high five you can do to your heart that is profound for any kind of anxiety or trauma that you may be feeling. And we're going to explain that in a minute. But first, I want to explain what some of the world's leading neuroscientists have said about why the high five habit works. When you go to raise your hand in the mirror, and this is how you're going to do it. You can do it right after you listen to this. You can do it tomorrow morning. What I want you to do to make it a habit, first of all, is I want you to do it right after you brush your teeth. Hopefully, we're all brushing our teeth every day. It's a really good habit to have. When you put your toothbrush down, like right on the counter, now we're going to practice the high five. You're going to take a minute and you're just going to look at yourself. And I want you to, in that moment, I want you to set an intention. And the reason why I want you to set an intention as you're with yourself is because there is new research out of Harvard that shows that if you take just a minute in the morning and you think about how you're going to show up today and who you're going to be, and more importantly, what actually matters to you? What game do you want to play that you want to make progress on? Not complete, not win at, just what's one thing you want to inch forward? And how do you need to show up today to really engage in that game that matters to you? It could be something personal, could be something at work. It doesn't matter with your kids. And then once you have that in your mind, you're going to raise your hand and you're going to high five yourself. And yes, it will feel weird. Yes, it will feel awkward, but I'm going to tell you what's not going to happen. It is neurologically and scientifically impossible to raise your hand and high five your reflection and think, "Gosh, you suck. Boy, you're ugly. Your chin's really pointy. Your jowls, Mel, are starting to look like saddlebags on a pack mule." Like, you can't think those things. You just can't. And here's why. You have spent your lifetime high-fiving other people or raising your hands in celebration with other people. You've done it so many times that the gesture of high-fiving, even by just seeing other people do it in sports matches, it's already encoded. Like, Fern, when somebody high fives you, what are they saying to you?
Well, I think they're celebrating you on a subconscious level and saying, "I see you, hey." And I think what I'm realizing as you're talking is, and this is so obvious to say, but it's just hit me, is that we're not to underestimate habit. Because I think some of the time we're sat there waiting for, quite frankly, an epiphany. There's going to be this moment where I really like myself, or if I get the job, the partner, the thing, then I'm going to like myself. We've got to do the habit bit first to get anywhere near that. And we are all relying on some miraculous, maybe it's because we've been sort of indoctrinated over the years with like the big reality TV shows where, you know, all of a sudden you're celebrated and you look amazing and you're on TV and everyone's cheering at you. And I'm going to have that moment. It's going to happen down the line. This is a habit. This is, like you say, cleaning your bloody teeth. This is a habit we have to do every day. And it's, as much as sort of changing your habit can be tiresome, once you're in a habit, you don't even know you're doing it. I don't think I've got to brush my teeth. You're just doing it. So we can't underestimate habit here.
Yes. And by the way, you already have a habit that we're trying to break, which is you have a habit of ignoring or criticizing yourself.
Yeah.
Just like you're cleaning your teeth, we got to clean your mind of all that bullshit you've been saying for a long time.
But that's empowering, because often we believe it. We think, well, I am just a piece of shit. But it's empowering to know, no, that is a habit that I go to, that I think I'm a piece of shit when X, Y, Z happens. It's not true. That also is a habit. Empowering, both things.
Yes.
Empowering.
Yes. Exactly. And you have friends that have done piece of shit things in their lives.
Yeah.
And you can understand that they did that. They drank, they were addicted, they cheated on people. They, like, whatever they did, they were a bloody asshole. But you can now see that they're trying. You can now see that they're changing and they're working hard, and you can love them through it. I'm here to tell you, you have to make a habit of doing this for yourself every day. And you just said this thing about, I'll be happy when I get that job or I lose that weight. The problem with attaching your happiness and your validation and your support to achieving something is, once you achieve it, you are stuck with the old habit of still hating yourself. And you're now going to need to find something else to achieve in order to prove that you're worthy of it again. You see, I've been an overachiever my whole life because I've equated achieving with being worth something. And when you are an overachiever and you think it's only when you're achieving something that you are worth loving or celebrating, you will be a jealous motherfucker, because everybody else that's succeeding is now competing with you for the love and for the worth that you want. And when you start to actually give yourself the love and the self-validation that you need, even when you're failing, especially when moments are hard, when you're, telling yourself, okay, Rex was an asshole to me last night and I feel like a terrible mother. And you stand there and you're like, you know what? Today I'm just going to show up and I'm going to be compassionate and patient, both with him and with myself. And you raise your hand and you high five yourself. What you're doing in that moment is you're shutting down the criticism. It's an act of defiance to that beatdown that you've been giving yourself. And because this is the coolest part, everybody, because you've been high-fiving everybody else and watching everybody else do it, all the messaging, I believe you, I love you, we got this. You give a teammate a high five or a kid a high five when their attitude is sinking, to basically say, I get it, it's hard, you blew it, but guess what? Pick back up. We're going in. Come on, we got this. I got your back. You're not alone here. So it communicates all of that. It's already in your subconscious. So when you go to raise your hand, two things happen. First of all, your nervous system recognizes the raised hand as a celebratory action. And so as you start to repeat this habit, it will start to give you a jolt of energy. This research comes from Dr. Daniel Amen, who, is this world's leading neuroscientist. He also said that the act of high-fiving gives you a drip of dopamine. So if you do this for more than 5 days and you start to push through the awkwardness and you start to push through how weird it feels because it's a new habit and because you're basically silencing judgment, you're going to feel your mood boost because your brain is releasing dopamine because of the subconscious programming associated with high-fiving. And that's not all. This is really cool. So I know you have a lot of parents that listen, and you need to, I know you've already read the study, but if you'll allow me, I want to unpack this because this is mind-blowing. So there was a study that they did with kids, right? Where they wanted to know, what's the best way to motivate a human being through a really challenging situation? And we're all going through a really challenging situation right now with how overwhelming the world is. And they said, we're going to divide kids into 3 groups. And group number 1, we're going to give these kids a very challenging bunch of homework to work through, super hard. And we're going to do that for all 3 groups. So these poor kids are toiling away at this challenging stuff. And group number 1, the encouragement that they gave these kids was based on the growth and the fixed mindset research from Dr. Carol Dweck. And what we know about this is that the fixed growth praise is basically walking up to somebody and complimenting them about something about them. Hey, you're really smart. Hey, you're a good student. Hey, I love the sweater that you're wearing. Keep on going. Yeah, that's sort of motivating because somebody sees you. The next group got the growth mindset type of praise, which is basically to tell somebody that they're doing a good job working hard. And what we know based on research is when you reward somebody or praise them for their hard work, you feel empowered because you can control your hard work. So you work a little harder. And sure enough, these kids in this second group, Fern, who were told you're working really hard, keep going. Ooh, I love your perseverance. They worked a lot harder than the kids that were told they were smart. But check this out. The third group, the researchers didn't say a word to them, not a word. These kids simply had a researcher walk up to them and high five them. That's it. Those kids who got a high five outworked, had more confidence, had better results, felt better about themselves than the other two groups combined. And the answer is why. And the reason is based on psychology. We all have fundamental emotional needs: to be seen, to be heard, and to be loved and celebrated for the unique human being that we are. When those needs of being seen, heard, and celebrated are met, you feel affirmed, you feel confident, you feel whole. When those needs are not being met, you feel rejected, you feel invisible, you feel disconnected and lost. So a simple high five was affirming that those researchers saw, wow, you're working really hard. Wow, I hear you. You're struggling with this. And wow, I'm going to celebrate you right here in this moment for who you are and how you're showing up and how you're going through. And I'm here to tell you, simply doing this for yourself every single morning and making it a habit and teaching it to your kids, it empowers you in a way that is hard to describe, because for the first time in your life, you are giving yourself what you have been seeking from other people. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.